Welcome back. This is the last lesson in Lesson 2. Just a quick reminder, notebook check. You have to have lesson numbers for all of your lessons as well as the titles. You are also not allowed to use any notes on the test. That said, last place we left off, we had King David, who was given an oath by God. 3 specific promises made to David concerning his son. Your son will, 1, son will build the temple. 2, I will establish his throne forever. And 3, he will be my son and I will be his father. David responded to this in joy because he saw that his son would excel him, and in many ways his son did excel him. He made peace with nations all over the world. He built the temple. People from all over the world came to worship the God of Israel in that temple. They came from all over the world to hear his wisdom, but things went bad. We saw that he broke the 3 particular Deuteronomic laws that kings were supposed to follow. They were not supposed to amass for themselves a large number of wives, horses, and wealth. Solomon did all 3 of those things. From that point forward, we're going to see how the kingdom of David crumbled from that point until it was basically destroyed and conquered. Before we discuss the downfall of the Davidic kingdom before the New Testament, I want to highlight the 10 properties of the kingdom of David, the Davidic kingdom. These 10 things are important to know because they will also mirror themselves in Jesus' kingdom in the Catholic Church. Note number 1. Unlike Moses' law, which was a law for the Israelites, the law and the wisdom given to David and Solomon is a law for mankind. So the laws in Deuteronomy we no longer follow. However, the wisdom found in the wisdom literature is for all times and all peoples. This is the only kingdom sworn by a divine oath. God established this kingdom with David and his son. Promises made to David were not strictly about David. They were mainly about his son. But past that, they were also about his children's children and primarily about Jesus himself. Even though David and Solomon were not Levites, they were priests. They offered sacrifices, which was unusual. But we were getting back to an older, more ancient model of the priesthood in Israel. If you remember, before the golden calf, all firstborn sons were priests in Israel. So David and Solomon being kings, it specifically says in the Psalms that they are made priests after the order of Melchizedek. And Melchizedek himself was also not a Levite. He was the priest king of Salem. So this points forward to Jesus being the true high priest and king. The kingdom of David was meant to rule all the other nations. If you remember, God's promise to the Israelites was to make them into a kingdom of priests. God's vision for Israel was to be the eldest brother of human nations, to lead them and teach them in proper worship of God. They failed the covenant at Sinai, so it took more time for that to happen. We can see under Solomon, with all the nations of the world coming to Israel to worship in the temple, that this was almost fulfilled until Solomon failed to keep the laws. The Davidic king was one who was supposed to rule with divine wisdom. We saw that most perfectly in Solomon, but we saw it in smaller ways with David as well. Of course, we'll see it most perfectly in Jesus. The property of the Davidic kingdom, the son of David will build the temple. Jesus will also do this more perfectly. Something we have not seen up to this point is David was the first person to be seen to be an exorcist in the Bible. He was playing his lyre for King Saul when King Saul was being troubled by demons. And whenever David would play the music, the demons would leave him. In the New Testament, many times people who are possessed by demons call out to Jesus for help, and he's often called Son of David because the Son of David was thought to have power over evil spirits. The Son of David achieved divine rest. David himself, through warfare, conquered much of what was left that needed to be conquered in Canaan, but Solomon was the one who was a king of peace and made peace treaties with all the nations. He achieved rest, meaning that there was no warfare, which allowed him to build the temple. Jesus achieves this divine rest most perfectly, and that is the rest that we look forward to in heaven. And last but not least, the Queen Mother of Israel had an active role in the kingdom. It's a problem if you have 700 wives, which one you would choose to be queen, because there would be a lot of fighting between the women. But the idea is Solomon only had one mother. So in Israel's kingdom, it was not the wife of the king who was the queen, it was the mother of the king who was the queen. So in the New Testament, that is why we honor Mary as the queen, because she is the queen mother of King Jesus. All right, moving on with the storyline. After Solomon died, his son Rehoboam took the throne after him. Now, Solomon built a lot of temples and a lot of palaces. He had many wives, and he built a lot of temples to false gods, even in Israel. That requires a lot of money, so he took in a lot of taxes, as we saw. He took in 666 talents of gold in just 1 year. that means that the people are being heavily taxed, and we had a tax revolt because the people wanted lower taxes. So when Solomon passed the torch to his son Rehoboam, they asked Rehoboam to lower the tax burden on them. Rehoboam went to 2 different sets of advisors to get advice. The older advisors who were part of Solomon's kingdom advised him to lower the taxes. They said, look, if you lower the taxes, the people will honor and love you. He also went to his friends and asked their opinions. And they said, you should raise the taxes to show these people who is boss. He made the wrong choice, and he listened to his buddies instead of listening to his wise advisors. And he made the tax burden even harsher than it was under Solomon. Actually, the people didn't like this, so 10 of the northern tribes rebelled against Rehoboam, and they made Jeroboam their new king. Jeroboam was a military leader in the time of Solomon. Jeroboam had rushed off to Egypt because he was afraid Solomon was going to kill him, probably because many of the people of Israel loved Jeroboam and saw him as an alternate king. So once Solomon died, Jeroboam came back, and the 10 northern tribes said, you know what, we like you, we're going to make you our new king. You might think God would be against this, but if you remember, God spoke to Solomon last time saying, because of your sins, I will take the kingdom from your son Rehoboam. I will leave him with but one tribe. Jeroboam's rule, even though he was not a son of David, was permissible by God on one condition: as long as he allowed his people to go into the south, to go to the temple to worship God, it would be fine. I'll let you guess what you think Jeroboam will do. If you guess that Jeroboam would refuse to let his subjects worship in the temple, you are correct. The first thing he did, instead of letting his subjects go down to Jerusalem to worship in the temple, was, hey, if I let my people go down there, they might become loyal to Rehoboam. So we'll just build a couple temples up here for ourselves. He built 2 golden calf idols and set them up in 2 cities. And that set the stage for the rest of the rule in the northern kingdom. So the rest of the history of the kings in Israel was, sometimes you had some bad kings, sometimes you had some good kings, but the 10 northern tribes ended up being exiled by the Assyrian Empire, leaving only the southern tribes of Judah and Benjamin, who were ultimately overtaken by the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans, which is why when we begin the New Testament, all of Israel is controlled by the Roman Empire. So I want to point out that this was the final curse predicted by Moses in Deuteronomy. If you remember Deuteronomy, Moses said, not if you break this law, but when you break this covenant with God in Deuteronomy, the curse will come upon you. The curse was that the land that God gave you, the promised land of Canaan, Israel, you will lose that land. But when you do, I will give you a new heart. So there is this curse that came upon them, but in their exile, in their Babylonian exile, the Jewish faith flourished like never before, which is why when we get to the New Testament, far from the Jewish faith being destroyed by these constant exiles and conquerings, it's more, it's flourished, it has grown more than ever before. Well, thank you again, and I'll see you next time.